Snow fell thick and unforgiving over the northern woods, turning frozen trees into silent witnesses. Beneath that clean white surface, a young police officer lay buried alive, her breath fading with the cold. No one knew she was there until a former Marine and his aging German Shepherd stepped off an old service road. The dog stopped, ears forward, then began to dig as if guided by something deeper than instinct. What they uncovered would expose betrayal hidden under snow and remind us that miracles sometimes walk on four paws. If you're watching tonight, let us know where you're watching from, and consider subscribing for stories that still believe in faith, courage, and doing what's right. Snow fell without urgency, thick and quiet, sealing the forest of northern Minnesota into a white silence that erased roads, sounds, and intentions alike. Logan Reed had learned to read weather the way some men read faces. At 38, he stood tall with a broad, squared frame shaped by years in the Marine Corps shoulders. Heavy posture, instinctively straight even when alone. His beard was trimmed short dark with threads of gray that arrived earlier than expected, and his face carried sharp lines at the jaw and cheekbones, the kind earned rather than inherited. The cold reddened his pale skin, but it never reached his eyes. Those stayed watchful, restrained, as if the world might still demand something from him without warning. He lived outside the town of Pine Hollow in a single-room cabin built by his father decades earlier. The cabin leaned slightly east, its cedar walls scarred by winters that did not forgive weakness. Logan fixed snowplows and municipal equipment during the long season, a job that required little conversation and paid just enough to keep the lights on and the past quiet. People in town described him as polite, distant, reliable. None of them asked why he never stayed for coffee. Ranger waited by the door, already alert. The German Shepherd was 8 years old, sable-coated with black and brown fur thick around the neck and shoulders. His muzzle had begun to gray, not from neglect, but time, and his movements carried the efficient economy of a dog that had once worked every day with purpose. Ranger had been a military K-9 before Logan adopted him through a quiet program that asked few questions. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and steady. Even at rest, his ears tracked the world. They did not speak man and dog. They didn't need to. Logan clipped the leash out of habit, not necessity, and stepped into the Forest Service trail behind the cabin. Snow reached mid-calf dry and deceptive hiding routes and frozen ground beneath. Ranger moved ahead with controlled confidence, nose low, body aligned, not wandering. Logan noticed it immediately. When Ranger walked like that, something had shifted. Easy, Logan muttered, though the word was for himself. The trail narrowed where pines pressed inward. Snow fell heavier here, muffling everything except Logan's breath and the soft compression of Ranger's paws. The dog slowed, then stopped. His ears snapped forward. His tail lifted, not wagging, not stiff, just raised. Logan felt it then, a tightening in the chest, the kind that came before bad news. Ranger pulled sharply to the left off the trail toward a low rise that looked indistinguishable from the rest of the forest floor. Snow lay smooth across it untouched, too untouched. Ranger let out a sharp bark, urgent wrong for play. He began to dig. Ranger Logan said, low and firm. The dog did not look back. Snow sprayed fast, efficient. Logan knelt, heart thudding harder than it had in years, and shoved his gloved hands into the drift. The snow here was denser beneath the surface, packed unnaturally. He scraped again and struck fabric. Dark blue. His breath stalled. Logan dug faster, fingers burning as cold crept through the gloves. A shoulder emerged, then an arm. Human. The skin beneath was pale, waxed by frost. A wrist appeared female, slim, bound with plastic ties that had cut into the flesh. She was breathing. "Jesus," Logan whispered. Ranger shifted instantly, changing from frantic to precise pause, scraping carefully near the face now emerging from the snow. Blonde hair matted with ice. A police insignia on the shoulder, partially torn. The woman's lips were blue. Her eyes fluttered unfocused, alive by the narrowest margin. Logan's training snapped into place without asking permission. He cut the restraints, wrapped his jacket around her torso, pressed 2 fingers to her neck. A pulse. Weak. He leaned close to her mouth. "Hey," he said, voice controlled, steady. "You're safe. Stay with me." Her eyes opened a fraction. They were light hazel, maybe, and glassed with pain. Her lips moved. "Don't," she rasped, barely audible. "They..." She coughed, shuddered, then went still again. Ranger whined low and distressed, then froze. Every hair along Logan's arms lifted. Ranger's head snapped toward the trees. His ears locked forward. A low growl vibrated in his chest, not loud enough to announce, but unmistakable. Logan followed the dog's gaze. Between the pines far back, where snow thickened into shadow, something moved. A flicker. Then a narrow beam of light slid briefly across the trunks, white deliberate, before vanishing as if switched off. Someone was there, watching. Logan tightened his grip on the woman's shoulder, his pulse steadying into something colder, sharper. Ranger stepped forward, placing himself between Logan and the darkness, teeth, barely visible body rigid with intent. The forest returned to silence, snow falling as if nothing had happened at all. The county hospital sat at the edge of Pine Hollow like an afterthought, 2 stories of brick and glass pressed against a world that rarely needed saving. Snow clung to its windowsills, muting the hum of generators and the crunch of boots outside. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed with a tired insistence too bright for the hour, too clean for what had just been dragged in from the forest. Deputy Emma Carter arrived wrapped in thermal blankets and borrowed coats, her body rigid with cold. At 27, she was slim and wiry, the kind of strength that came from long shifts and learned restraint rather than bulk. Her blonde hair, usually kept in a practical low ponytail, was stiff with ice at the ends. Her skin, fair and freckled, had gone pale to the point of translucence, veins faintly visible at her temples. Even unconscious, her jaw was set tight, as if some part of her refused to yield. Logan stood back as the nurses moved fast, practiced hands stripping away frozen layers. He gave his statement with the economy of a man who had learned that extra words invited the wrong kind of attention. Found her in the woods, hypothermia, bound, alive, nothing else volunteered. Ranger planted himself outside the trauma bay doors. The dog lay sphinx still on the tile-broad head between his paws, eyes open and tracking every footstep. His ears twitched at changes in rhythm, rubber soles versus boots, hurried gaits versus measured ones. When a janitor's cart rattled past too close, Ranger lifted his head and released a low, controlled growl that never rose to a bark. It was a warning, not a threat. Logan felt it in his chest. The same unease that had followed him home from deployments. Places where they said you were safe were often where people got careless. The doors swung open and Sheriff Maren Holt entered with the authority of someone who never hurried because she didn't have to. She was in her mid-40s, tall and rangy, with wind-reddened cheeks and pale blonde hair braided tight beneath her hat. Her face was lean, angular, weathered by years of northern winters and worse truths. Her eyes, clear winter blue, missed very little. "Who found her?" Holt asked. Logan raised a hand slightly. Holt studied him for a moment longer than necessary, taking in the squared shoulders, the controlled stillness, the dog at his side. "Keep this quiet," she said, already turning to the staff. "No names, no press, not yet." Emma stirred once hours later. Logan was sitting when her eyes fluttered open. Ranger lifted his head instantly, ears forward. Emma's gaze drifted unfocused, then sharpened with sudden fear when she tried to move and couldn't. "Easy," Logan said softly. "You're safe." Her lips trembled. "No," she whispered, voice raw. "Not," she swallowed breath, hitching. "Someone in the department." Logan leaned closer. "Who?" Her eyes squeezed shut, tears freezing at the corners. "They sold me," she breathed. "Please." Her body sagged as the effort ran out of her. The monitor steadied. She was gone again, pulled under by exhaustion and cold. Holt stood in the doorway, having heard enough. "Lock it down," she said to a deputy. "Everyone in and out gets logged." It was near midnight when Ranger rose to his feet without sound. Logan followed the dog's line of sight down the corridor. A man in a gray jacket lingered near the supply room, pretending to read a clipboard. He was thin, mid-30s, unshaven, in a way that suggested neglect rather than style. His eyes flicked too often toward Emma's door. Ranger's nose flared. He let out a sharp bark, one precise. Holt was there in seconds. The man's stammered voice too light. "Just maintenance." Ranger stepped forward, teeth visible now, posture locked. The man's hand twitched toward his pocket. Holt's deputy moved faster. The syringe hit the floor first. Then the vial, clear liquid unlabeled, a sedative strong enough to stop breathing if dosed wrong. The man collapsed into a chair, sweat breaking across his brow. Holt stared at the item's jaw tightening. "You would have killed her. Looked like complications," the man muttered. "Cold does the rest." Logan felt something settle into place. The shape of intent. This wasn't cleanup. It was follow-through. Ranger returned to his post by Emma's door, never taking his eyes off the man as he was led away. The hospital lights hummed on, indifferent. Logan stepped closer to the glass, watching Emma's chest rise and fall. He understood now. Whoever had buried her in the forest hadn't failed. They were patient, and they knew where she was. The storm eased by morning, leaving behind a cold that felt sharper for the quiet. Snowbanks hardened into pale walls along the service roads, their edges cut clean by plows that had worked through the night. Pine Hollow looked calm again, the way small towns always did after something terrible, tidy on the surface, hiding the fractures underneath. Sheriff Maren Holt did not ask Logan Reed for help in public. She waited until the hospital shift changed, until the hallways thinned and voices dropped. Holt stood with her coat still on braid, tucked tight. Her posture relaxed in a way that meant the opposite. She had learned over years of keeping order in a place where everyone knew everyone that subtlety lasted longer than force. "You and your dog," she said quietly. "You see things my people miss." Logan didn't answer right away. He leaned against the wall outside Emma Carter's room. Arms folded, the old Marine habit of grounding himself in stillness. Ranger sat at his boots, head lifted, eyes tracking Holt with calm appraisal. I don't work cases, Logan said finally. Holt's mouth twitched almost a smile. No, but you follow patterns, and your dog follows truth. That was how Logan found himself driving Holt's unmarked SUV down a narrow service road, skirting the forest ranger riding alert in the back. The road was older than the town once used for logging, now mostly forgotten, except during winter emergencies. Snow covered it unevenly, but Logan saw what others might not: compressed tracks, faint but deliberate. He stopped the vehicle and knelt, brushing snow aside with gloved hands. Ranger lowered his nose, inhaled once, then sneezed sharply, an alert behavior irritation mixed with recognition. Tires, Logan said. Heavy. Not county. The tread pattern was distinctive, deep chevrons, offset spacing. Logan had seen it before on commercial tow rigs built for ice recovery. He straightened slowly, a weight settling in his chest. There was only one local company that still ran that model: Northridge Recovery. Back at the hospital, Emma's color had improved, though she looked smaller in the bed, swallowed by white sheets. Her freckles stood out more now, against skin still too pale. She was awake, alert enough to track faces, but every movement cost her. Logan kept his distance. Ranger lay near the door, chin on paws, ears twitching at the murmur of voices. They picked me up on County 9, Emma said, voice rough but steady. Said there was a disabled plow blocking emergency access. I trusted the call sign, she swallowed. It was one of ours. The words landed heavy. Before Holt could press further, footsteps approached, measured, unfamiliar. A woman entered the room without hesitation, coat dusted with snow, notebook already in hand. Naomi Vance was in her early 40s, average height, with a sharp jawline and dark auburn hair cut into a blunt bob that framed her face like a warning. Her skin was olive-toned, her eyes dark and analytical, missing nothing while pretending to miss everything. She wore no badge on her coat, but authority followed her anyway, quiet and persistent. State investigation, Naomi said. I hear you found a ghost in the snow. Holt filled her in fast. Naomi listened without interrupting, pen moving only when something mattered. Winter procurement fraud, Naomi said when Holt finished. It's been circling the state for years. Fuel, equipment, emergency contracts, clean paperwork, dirty execution. Logan shifted his weight. You think this is connected? Naomi's eyes flicked to him. I think anyone who buries a cop alive during a blizzard isn't improvising. Later, Logan stood alone in the hospital stairwell when his phone vibrated. The number was blocked. Marine, a man's voice, said, calm, almost amused. You just dug up something that wasn't meant to breathe again. The line went dead. Logan stared at the phone pulse, steady but cold. Ranger appeared at his side, without sound, pressing his shoulder briefly against Logan's leg, a grounding touch. That night, Naomi and Holt spread files across a folding table in the break room. Ranger lay beneath it, head resting on paws, eyes half-lidded but alert. Naomi pointed to a highlighted entry. Dispatch logs. Northridge Recovery responded to 4 emergency assists during the storm. 2 overlap with Emma's last patrol route. Holt exhaled slowly. Owners clean on paper. Owners always are, Naomi replied. Drivers aren't. Emma slept through most of it, but when she woke again, she asked for water and spoke without preamble. They rerouted me, she said. Off the main road. Said there was a jackknifed rig near the lake cut. Logan's head lifted. The old lake access, Emma nodded. They wanted it to look like I slid off. Snow would do the rest. Outside, Ranger rose, suddenly, hackles lifting. his head turned toward the parking lot windows. Logan followed his gaze. A tow truck sat idling near the far light pole engine, running lights off. Too late. Too still. The truck pulled away as Logan reached the door. Ranger let out a single bark, sharp and warning. Someone knew they were close. The lake lay wide and pale beneath a sky that offered no mercy. Snow had fallen thin overnight, the kind that disguised danger by smoothing every edge. Naomi Vance stood at the hood of the SUV with a folded map spread beneath her gloved hands, her breath fogging in short, controlled bursts. She had the look of a woman assembling a machine in her head, each piece placed not for beauty, but function. "Timeline first," Naomi said. Her voice was level, unhurried. "Emma vanishes during the storm window. A supply run crosses here. She tapped the lake's narrow cut because snow erases tracks better than asphalt." Sheriff Maren Holt nodded once. She stood with her feet planted wide for balance, braid tucked into her coat, eyes sweeping the shoreline with practiced patience. "We'll walk it, carefully." Logan Reed said nothing. He watched Ranger. The German Shepherd paced at the edge of the access road, nose down, tail-level movements, tighter than usual. Ranger wasn't scanning randomly. He was pulling subtle but persistent toward a line that veered away from the deputy's planned sweep. Logan had learned to trust that pull. It was the same feeling he'd followed through smoke and chaos years ago, when instinct mattered more than orders. "Hold," Logan said quietly, raising a hand. Holt paused. Naomi looked over. "Dog's got something," Logan added. They shifted course. The ice near the lake's edge looked solid enough, opaque, faintly blue under the snow. Ranger took 3 steps forward, then snapped back teeth, catching the fabric of Logan's jacket. He yanked hard, growling low. The sound cut through the cold like a blade. The ice cracked where Logan would have stepped. Not a dramatic break, just a sharp, ugly spider web racing outward. Water seeped up in thin black lines. Logan staggered backward, heart punching once against his ribs. He looked down and saw it then, a faint smear beneath the snow darker than shadow. Oil, just enough to weaken the surface without drawing attention. "They said it," Naomi said, crouching carefully to photograph the spread. Her eyes were sharp now, anger threaded through the calm. They wanted a slide, a panic step. Holt's jaw tightened. They didn't need a gun. They backed away together, marking the perimeter. Ranger stayed between Logan and the ice body, angled like a living barricade. By nightfall, the wind picked up. The hospital glowed against the dark like a ship at sea, too visible, too alone. Inside, emergency lights flickered. The outage came without warning. 7 minutes, they would later say, long enough to do damage, short enough to excuse. Logan was in the stairwell when the lights died. He moved without thinking, boots taking 2 steps at a time. Ranger was already ahead, nails clicking hard against concrete. The corridor smelled different in the dark cleaners, and ozone, something sharp beneath it. Emma Carter's room stood open. The bed was empty, sheets pulled back, monitors disconnected. Ranger reached the doorway first and froze, hackles lifting. His head dipped to the floor. On the tile lay a plastic band, white and snapped clean, the patient identification bracelet. Emma's name still readable. Logan's stomach dropped. Holt arrived seconds later, breath steady but eyes blazing. Naomi followed, face carved into focus. "They took her," Holt said. It wasn't a question. The security desk buzzed back online too late. Camera feeds showed static, then nothing. Clean deletions. Intentional. Naomi straightened, already thinking ahead. They wouldn't carry her far in this weather, not unless they had help. Help arrived outside in the form of an idling engine. A tow truck sat near the ambulance bay lights, off driver unseen. It pulled away as deputies spilled through the doors. Northridge Holt said. She didn't need confirmation. Back inside, Logan crouched by the doorway while Ranger worked. The dog's nose traced a path down the hall past supply closets to a service exit propped with a wedge. Snow drifted in through the crack, clean and deceptive. Ranger barked once sharp. Naomi followed the trail with her eyes. They're moving her fast. Lake route won't work again. Logan stood. Old hunting cabins east of the cut. Some still have generators. Holt looked at him, a hard decision, already made. We don't chase blind. Naomi closed her notebook. We don't have to. We make them think we are. They split the response. Holt locked down the town roads. Naomi contacted the state for aerial thermal limited, but enough to catch heat where there shouldn't be any. Logan stayed where he was told, hands clenched, Ranger pressed against his leg like a promise. The phone vibrated. Unknown number. Marine, the voice said again, smooth as before. You're late. Logan said nothing. You want her breathing when you find her, the man continued. Bring what we want. Come alone. The call ended. Logan lowered the phone slowly. Ranger looked up at him, eyes dark and steady, waiting. Holt approached, voice low. They reached out. Logan nodded once. They think I'll trade. Naomi's gaze was calculating now, not cold, precise. Then we let them. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and thorough. The kind that erased mistakes and hid footprints. Somewhere beyond the tree line, an engine cut, then went quiet. Emma's bracelet lay on the tile, where Logan had found it, a small white circle, marking where the ground had shifted under their feet. And nothing would be simple again. By dawn, Pine Hollow no longer pretended to be calm. Police cruisers blocked side streets. County officials arrived in dark SUVs with clipped voices and pre-written authority. The story hardened fast jurisdictional conflict, procedural violations, outside interference. Sheriff Marin Holt was ordered to step back pending review. Naomi Vance received a call that sounded polite and landed like a blade, her authority suspended for exceeding scope. The town, relieved to have someone to blame, chose the easiest targets. Logan Reed felt it the moment the tone shifted. Eyes lingered too long. Doors closed faster. He was no longer the man who found a deputy alive in the snow. He was the Marine who wouldn't leave things alone. Ranger felt it too. A uniformed animal control officer waited in the hospital lobby with a clipboard and an apologetic smile that never reached his eyes. He was young, early 30s, narrow-shouldered, his hair cropped too tight, as if trying to look official enough to borrow confidence. He cleared his throat. We've had complaints, he said, glancing at Ranger. Aggressive behavior. We're required to. Ranger stood and placed himself in front of Logan, broad chest forward, ears high. Not snarling, watching. Logan's voice stayed even. He's a trained K-9. He saved a life. The officer shrugged, palms up. Orders. Holt intervened before it went further, her winter blue eyes flashing. Not today, she said, and somehow that was enough for now. Logan left the hospital with Ranger at heel and a pressure in his chest that felt like old deployments. When the town decided you were a problem, it didn't shout. It tightened. He drove to the cabin and laid the items he'd kept quiet about on the kitchen table. the mud-caked police badge he'd found the first day, the cracked edge where enamel met metal. He turned it under the light and saw what he'd missed before a faint streak of paint metallic gray with a blue fleck caught in the seam. Logan knew paint. He drove to the edge of town to a low cinder-block garage with fresh plow tracks scored into the snow outside. Mercer Automotive. The sign was new. The building wasn't. Inside, the air smelled of oil and cold steel. Dale Mercer emerged from the back bay, wiping his hands on a rag. He was in his late 50s, tall and thick through the middle with a neatly trimmed beard gone mostly white. His hair was combed back with care. His face had the smooth confidence of a man used to being thanked. His eyes, however, were watchful, calculating in the way of someone who'd learned which risks paid and which needed insulation. Logan Mercer said, warm as a handshake. "Heard you've had a rough week." Logan held up the badge. "Your paint." Mercer glanced once, just long enough. "Lots of trucks use similar coatings. Not with that fleck." Mercer smiled. "You fixing plows now or investigating?" Logan didn't answer. He turned and left. Ranger's nails clicked once on the concrete, a small punctuation. Back at the hospital, Naomi waited in a side room she wasn't supposed to be in anymore. Without her coat, she looked smaller, sharper sleeves, rolled notebook tucked away. Authority hadn't left her. It had condensed. Mercer Logan said. Naomi nodded. Shell companies, recovery contracts, emergency lanes no one questions during storms. I flagged the numbers before they pulled me, and Emma Logan asked. Naomi's jaw tightened. She recorded plates, personal camera. She was careful. That's why they moved fast. The message arrived just after noon. A photo, grainy flash lit. Emma Carter bound to a chair inside a hunting cabin log walls, a kerosene lamp. Her face bruised but conscious. Her eyes defiant even through pain. Text beneath it. Trade the card. Come alone. Logan stared at the screen until the room narrowed. Ranger pressed his shoulder against Logan's thigh, a steady weight. They want me, Logan said. Naomi met his gaze. They want control. Holt joined them minutes later, stripped of command, but not resolve. County's shutting us out, she said, but roads are still mine to patrol. Logan exhaled once. I'll go, No, Holt said. We make them think you are. The plan was ugly and thin, and the only one left. Logan would go where they told him. Holt would hold the perimeter without showing it. Naomi would use what access she still had to freeze Mercer's accounts the moment he showed his hand. They prepped fast. Logan drove east into the trees as dusk fell. Ranger in the back silent. Snow thickened. The cabin appeared where the message promised, old half-collapsed generator humming. Mercer stood outside, coat immaculate, breath white, in the cold. Two men flanked him. One wore a sheriff's jacket. The other held a rifle, loosely careless confidence. Card, Mercer asked. Logan stepped forward, empty hands raised. She lives. Mercer smiled. Depends. Ranger lunged. Not at Mercer, past him. Straight at the man in the sheriff's jacket teeth, finding fabric weight slamming him into the snow. The rifle clattered. Logan moved at the same instant, a flash of old muscle memory, knocking Mercer backward into the drift. Holt's cruisers lit the trees blue and red. Naomi's voice crackled over the radio, warrants, cleared accounts, frozen. The cabin door burst open behind Mercer. Emma stumbled out, wrists free, face set hard. Snow swallowed the chaos, muffling it into something final. Logan stood breathing hard. Ranger at his side, Emma upright between Holt's deputies. Mercer lay in the snow, the careful man finally exposed, and for the first time since this began, the town's silence broke in the right direction. Snow came down sideways, driven by a wind that scraped sound from the trees. The hunting cabin crouched at the edge of the clearing, like an animal that had learned to survive by staying small. Its roof sagged under white weight. A single lamp burned inside yellow and exposed. Logan Reed did not arrive alone. He walked the last 50 yards with his shoulders loose and his hands' visible posture open in a way that looked like surrender to anyone watching. Beneath his jacket, his breathing was measured. Years ago, in places where mistakes had names and consequences, he had learned how to look harmless without being helpless. Ranger patted at his heel. The German Shepherd wore a compact camera fixed to his collar, black casing against sable fur. At 8, Ranger moved a fraction slower than he once had joints, careful in the cold, but his eyes were sharp as ever. He did not pull. He did not bark. He watched. Behind the tree line, Sheriff Maren Holt waited with her deputies, engines, dark radios muted. She stood straight, despite the windbraid tucked face set. Authority had been stripped from her on paper, not in spirit. She had learned long ago that justice did not always wear the badge it deserved. 2 ridges back, Naomi Vance hunched over a tablet in a heated truck, auburn hair escaping her cap, fingers moving fast. The data feed from Ranger's camera flickered snow movement the cabin's back wall. Naomi's expression was calm focused. This was the work she trusted fax timing proof. Logan reached the cabin. The door opened. Light spilled onto snow churned by boots. Dale Mercer stepped into view, coat immaculate despite the storm beard trimmed breath steady. Control had always been his armor. Tonight it looked thinner. To Mercer's left stood a man with a rifle, young, nervous cheeks, raw from the cold. To his right, a uniform Logan recognized, a sheriff's jacket, worn by Deputy Alan Price, early 40s, lean build, dark stubble, that never quite hid the lines of a tired mouth. Price's eyes flicked away when Logan looked at him. Guilt had a posture. Logan knew it well. Card Mercer said, voice raised to Carrie. Slow. Logan lifted his hands. She lives. Mercer smiled, faint and disappointed. That depends on how quickly you learn. A sound came from behind the cabin. A muffled cry cut short. Ranger's ears snapped forward. Logan took one step, then another, letting his weight shift as if unbalanced by the snow. Mercer nodded to Price. Finish it, Mercer said. Price hesitated. It was brief human. Enough. Ranger exploded into motion. He did not go for Mercer. He did not go for the rifle. He went for Price. The shepherd crossed the space in a blur of muscle and intent teeth, finding sleeve weight driving the deputy backward into the drift. The rifle clattered away. Price hit the ground hard, breath gone shock written across his face. At the same instant Logan moved, he closed the distance on Mercer with a short, efficient burst shoulder into chest, both of them going down. Mercer's careful coat filled with snow. His control fractured into panic. Behind the cabin, the lamp tipped. Emma Carter was half buried again, knees and hips trapped by packed snow wrists, bound but loosened alive, shaking eyes blazing. She looked thinner than she had in the hospital face, bruised freckles stark against pale skin. When she saw Logan, something hard and determined set her jaw. Ranger tore at the bindings with careful urgency, teeth precise. Emma gasped as circulation returned, then pushed, clawing her way free. She stood unsteadily, shoulders squared despite the pain. Red and blue lights burst through the trees. Holt's deputies swept the clearing weapons, raised commands, clean and loud. The rifleman dropped to his knees. Price lay pinned, stunned, and silent. Mercer tried to rise once and failed. "Hands where I can see them," Holt said, stepping forward, voice cutting through wind and chaos. Her eyes met Mercer's without flinching. In Naomi's truck, alerts cascaded across the screen. Accounts frozen, contracts flagged, warrants green-lit. She sent the final packet with a single tap and leaned back, breath leaving her in a long, controlled line. Proof had weight. Tonight it landed. Emma moved to Logan's side, favoring one leg, but upright. She looked at Ranger, knelt with effort, and pressed her forehead briefly to his. The dog stood still, accepting, eyes softening for a heartbeat. Snow thickened, swallowing sound, erasing tracks, as Mercer was lifted to his feet and cuffed. He looked smaller now, careful man, reduced to shivering shape. By morning, Pine Hollow would wake to explanations and headlines it hadn't chosen. Logan would not stand in front of cameras. He would not correct the story when it made him larger than he was. He returned to the cabin before dawn. Inside, the quiet felt earned. Logan took the Marine jacket from its hook and folded it not as a goodbye, but as a promise kept. Ranger settled near the door, heavy head resting against Logan's boot, warmth, solid and real. Later, Emma came by and borrowed winter gear, hair pulled back, eyes steady. She thanked Logan once simply. There were things that did not need more. Snow fell again, gentle this time, covering what was broken. Logan stood at the window with Ranger beside him and felt the old oath settle, not spoken, not loud, but intact. Sometimes people think miracles arrive with thunder and light, but most miracles come quietly. They come in the form of a faithful dog that refuses to walk away, a man who keeps his oath when no one is watching, a stranger who chooses courage over fear in the middle of a snowstorm. God does not always stop the storm. Sometimes he sends help into it. If you've ever felt buried by hardship, exhaustion, or silence, remember this: the snow does not get the final word. God still sees you, and help often arrives in ways you never expect. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We read every one. And if you believe that love, loyalty, and faith still matter in this world, subscribe to the channel so we can continue telling stories like this together. May God bless you and your family, keep you safe through every season, and guide your steps even through the coldest winter. Amen.